ULMB 2 is the latest version of Nvidia's ultra-low motion blur technology, and they say that now it can match the perceived motion clarity of a 1000 Hz display. Today, we're going to see if that's true, and also put it against some of the fastest monitors that you can buy right now, like the 360 Hz from Zowie, the 240 Hz OLEDs, which I'm a big fan of, and also the new 500 Hz from Alienware. If you guys have watched my other monitor reviews, you know that this stuff has always been at the focus of my testing. I'm trying to find the fastest, most fluid feeling displays out there, so this ULMB 2 update got me really interested, and here's why. Here we're looking at a character that's moving consistently over a period of time, and inside the game world, ignoring frame rates and other limitations, it looks something like this, just perfect continuous motion. But when viewed on a screen, what we're actually seeing is a series of still images, and that now looks like this. Each new frame is held until the next one is ready. This is called sampling and holding. Pretty much every LCD display works like this, and our eyes don't like it. Despite the memes about human vision not being able to see above 60 Hz, even on a 360 Hz display, your eyes can notice this imperfect motion created by sampling and holding. In other words, your eyes can tell that it's not actually continuous. This is why even on a high refresh rate OLED with 0 millisecond response times and 0 ghosting, your eyes will still add motion blur to account for the way that it perceives this movement over time. The only way to overcome this is with extremely high refresh rates. We're talking 1000 Hz plus. That way the sample and hold intervals are much shorter and we get much closer to the true motion of what we're meant to be seeing. But there's a second way too, and that's with backlight strobing. By only keeping the display on for a really short period for each frame, the way that frames are presented is actually a lot closer to continuous motion. And oddly enough, although your eyes can notice the sampling and holding of an image quite easily, most people can't notice this strobing on and off, at least at 240 Hz and above. So whether we're talking about Zowie's Diac, or Asus's ULMB, or Nvidia's ULMB, they all pretty much work the same way, with temporarily disabling the backlight between each screen refresh, just with varying degrees of success, and a lot of it does have to do with what physical panel you are using as well. So backlight strobing, long story short, is nothing new. We've seen this before on many monitors, but ULMB 2 aims to be the best version of this blur reduction tech that we've seen. For starters, there won't be any brightness issues. It's going to be on the fastest gaming monitors that are currently out, and it aims to have the most precise tuning out there with the least amount of artifacting. And up until now, the smoothest monitor that I've ever played on is the Zowie XL2566K. That is a 1080p TN 360 Hz monitor with really good backlight strobing, some of the best on the market with Diac Plus. And I don't mention that monitor much because it doesn't really have a lot else going for it, being a 1080p TN panel for as expensive as it is. But man, that monitor really left an impression on me. I have really yet to feel anything that has that super sharp, super clear look that display just somehow has all of the time. But here we have the Asus PG27AQN. It's 1440p 360 Hz IPS. I've done a couple of videos on it so far. It's pretty much the best all-around gaming monitor that you can buy at the moment. The one thing missing though is backlight strobing. Until now, Nvidia has piped the ULMB 2 update onto this thing, and today we're going to see if ULMB 2 is as good as Nvidia says it is. So many of you are familiar with the UFO ghosting test from blowbusters.com. I've used it in basically every monitor review so far. It's incredibly good, but we're not using it today. With Nvidia's new display testing software, you can actually create your own kind of UFO motion test, which works the same way, just uses images from inside a game instead. So this Lucio, for example, wall running in Overwatch 2, it looks pretty convincing, I might say. It's a really close simulation of what this would actually look like in game. So before the ULMB 2 update, the PG27AQN and the 240 Hz OLEDs that I've tried, I've always felt that the blur performance in game and how sharp everything looked in game was actually pretty close. Despite the image quality differences and the response time differences between these monitors and the different panel types, when it came down to tracking targets and flicking your mouse and moving around really fast, I've always felt that the experience between 240 Hz OLED and this 360 Hz IPS was pretty interchangeable. And our moving camera test basically confirms this. On the target here, there's a bit more detail on the 360 Hz, but it's pretty negligible. And then in our second test, the two look almost identical in terms of blur. But when we turn on the new ULMB 2, we get pretty close to what would be a perfect looking target with no blur. You'd almost think that this is one of Nvidia's funny AI upscaling tricks due to how much more more detail you can actually see, but no, this is just really well-tuned backlight strobing. And to be fair, the PG27AQN without ULMB2, it already produced a really clear image during fast motion, but this really kicks it up a couple of notches. Take a look at Tracer's guns here, for example. They're relatively blurred out without strobing. You can't really see any detail, but they're almost perfect with it turned on. And so the difference, if you're playing, fast-paced competitive shooters, it's a sharper and clearer looking game world during that really fast motion. In fact, it kind of reminds me of how I felt first playing on that 360 Hz from Zowie with Diac Plus. Everything just looked so crispy and clear all of the time. The question is now, which one is better, Diac or ULMB2? Well, we do see that sharp, boosted clarity look from the XL2566K, but ULMB2 running on the PG27 definitely looks cleaner. And there are two big differences here. ULMB2 doesn't seem to suffer at all from that double image effect that you sometimes see with backlight strobing, which is known as strobe crosstalk. And secondly, the boost in detail that you get from 1440p versus 1080 here is pretty noticeable. Character models are more detailed, textures look better, and that also gives you a slight boost in motion clarity alone. So ULMB2 versus Diac Plus, this does produce a clearer looking image. There's no strobe crosstalk or any artifacting. It looks incredibly clean, and at 1440p especially, you can start to notice more of that detail benefit that you get with those more pixels. But what about versus 500 Hz? And yeah, it's kind of crazy that this is already a thing. 500 Hz gaming monitors, they do actually exist now, and with games like Overwatch 2 and Valorant actually being able to drive those sorts of frames, this is something that I was super hyped to test out. Now at 500 Hz, each frame is only on screen for 2 milliseconds flat. That means that the pixel transitions, the response times need to be at least that quick. 2 milliseconds. And if it's slower than that, basically what we'll get is some pretty bad ghosting. And after running the tests, yeah, we do see a 2 millisecond average, which is pretty good, until you realize that it's slower than the other 3 monitors that we've tested, and that this is in fact just an average. That means that some transitions are actually in that 3 to 4 millisecond range. In other words, just plainly speaking, the response times of this 500 Hz monitor are not fast enough to keep up with that 500 Hz refresh rate. So it's a bit weird. We have the highest refresh rate, yet the slowest pixel response time in this lineup. That doesn't look good. And so going back to our moving camera tests, it looks okay, but I definitely expected way better from a 500 Hz monitor. And this lines up pretty well with my own experience playing on the display and testing it out. It just doesn't live up to what you would really expect 500 Hz to feel like. So lining them all up, pretty much the 4 fastest gaming monitors on the market, ULMB2 on the PG27, it is currently the clearest thing on the market. Nvidia claim that this is effectively the motion clarity of a 1000 Hz plus display, and it's hard to argue against that. It looks incredibly good. And especially if you're on a 144 Hz or a really cheap 240 Hz, this is going to be a pretty dramatic difference. So for me, switching from the 240 Hz OLED, which I've been maining and really enjoying, and then coming over to the ULMB2 update on the PG27, I've got to be honest, I feel like I play the same on both. Both monitors, 27 inches, 1440p, relatively good colors compared to a lot of the other stuff that's out there on the market. And to be honest, after I start playing on them for more than 30 minutes, I'm not thinking about what monitor I'm playing on. I'm just focusing on the game. I have good games on both, I have bad games on both, I hit nice clips on both monitors as well. On one hand, I do really love that deep image that you get from the OLED and just that massive boost in contrast. And then on the other hand, fast chaotic moments do feel better with 360 Hz ULMB2. You just kind of feel that you can keep up with them just a little bit more. So yeah, bottom line, it's really cool to see another excellent backlight strobing option on the market, especially at 1440p. Most of them are 1080p. And I'm also pleased to report that on the PG27, it tops out at 275 nits and is brightness adjustable as well. So brightness here is not an issue when you turn ULMB on. Now, I'll leave my current monitor recommendations listed down below in the description for those interested, and I'll have a range of different price points there as well, instead of just the high-end stuff that we've talked about today. But yeah, as always, a huge thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.